All right, good Friday morning. It's time for our update here to show you what's happening as we're still tracking the winter storm threat across the state of South Carolina. We do have some updates for you this morning, and here's what's new. Confidence is increasing in a major ice storm for the upstate of South Carolina. That may even go into the northern Midlands, but really the I-85 corridor, the upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg Metro, back to Anderson, up toward Gaffney, Charlotte, Rock Hill. That's the area we're really watching for this, with moderate icing likely for the Midlands and the PD, little if any for much of the low country and the Grand Strand. Got a new thing to throw in there too this morning. Thunderstorm risk is developing for Sunday afternoon, evening. I'll talk a little more about that coming up in just a few. The biggest headline here on this graphic, though, for you this morning is prepare today for the possibility of no travel and widespread power outages, potentially for days, in the upstate and northern Midlands. And let me show you why. Here's what we have. The details are coming into focus. We said that would be on Friday, and here they are. We're going to start this thing out, I think, with a sleet and freezing rain mixture, maybe all sleet for a little while across parts of the upstate Saturday night before this switches over to freezing rain. Let's try to get as much of this as sleet as possible. Sleet are those little ice pellets that fall on the ground. They bounce around all over everything, and they accumulate like snow, but not as heavily as snow does. It's going to be about an inch thick, so it's going to give you about a layer like that across most of the upstate, maybe 2 inches in some spots, about a half an inch to a trace across the Midlands and PD. That is what's going to set the stage for what will be essentially a block of ice on the ground as freezing rain falls on top of that. These are our forecast ice amounts. This is from the National Weather Service. These numbers look pretty good. These were just issued this morning around 4 a.m. I like the idea here. You see, it goes along with what I said yesterday. Generally along and north of I-20 will be the highest impact area. That's 1/4 of an inch or greater. 1/4 of an inch is about when we see the big time issues develop, particularly with some tree damage and power outages and roadway conditions going downhill. Once you get to about a half an inch, that's when the power outages become more widespread, tree damage becomes more widespread, and travel pretty much becomes non-existent. And you see that's going to be along the I-85 corridor. That's Anderson, Greenville, Spartanburg, Clemson, Gaffney, Union, maybe even up to Rock Hill and Chester are going to be approaching that half-inch mark. You see that's even flirting with that just shy of 4/10 of an inch in Lancaster. Same thing in Newberry. The state capital, I think you're going to probably be somewhere around 2/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little higher, but this looks reasonable. And then once you get farther south, you're talking Orangeburg over to King Street, about 1/10 of an inch at most, and then outside of that area, let's say around Monk's Corner, maybe Walterboro, maybe as far south as Somerville, but I doubt it. A trace, that's about what you can expect. Pretty much nothing for the Grand Strand, pretty much nothing for Georgetown, and the same thing for the Charleston Metro down toward Beaufort and Savannah. Around Augusta, about 2/10 of an inch is probably where we'll be. I think that's going to be fair for Aiken, maybe a little more in Aiken and Edgefield, but you get the general idea there. This is what really has my attention, though, when we're looking at the upstate. The probability of 3/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, that's freezing rain. That's not the sleet. That's glaze on top of that. That's the nasty stuff. That's what builds up on the trees and the power lines. That probability of 0.75 inches or greater is now at 40% or greater for a good part of the upstate. Right along I-85, that includes Anderson, Clemson, Greenville, Spartanburg, over toward Gaffney, and it's trying to reach up into the Charlotte Metro too, and that's through Sunday evening. So let's break that down. When you put it in impact terms, that's major impacts for the upstate of South Carolina on that I-85 corridor. Again, including those cities and towns I've listed: Anderson, Clemson, Pickens, Greenville, Spartanburg, Lawrence, over to Gaffney, Union, and then eventually I think this will probably expand toward the Charlotte area. You can expect considerable disruptions to daily life, dangerous or impossible travel, and widespread power outages are expected in this area. So you got to prepare for that. That's why we're saying in the upstate, start those preparations today. Moderate impacts are expected from Augusta to Columbia to Florence, generally along and to the north of that I-20 corridor. And that would still give you some pretty rough travel, especially on the bridges and overpasses, but even secondary roads will slick up in that situation, and there will be some scattered power outages inside that moderate impact zone. So if you're in the major impact zone or even the moderate impact zone, just in case, if you want to prepare in the moderate impact, it's not going to hurt anything. Trim weak or damaged tree branches around your home. Make sure you're staying away from power lines. Just got to say that. I know it's common sense, but it helps me sleep better at night. Have enough food and medications to last you through the end of next week. The ice, let's say it melts off the roadways. The problem is there's going to be so much tree damage in some of these communities. It's a really forested part of the state up around the upstate. And we need to make sure we're prepared that we may not be able to get in and out of our neighborhoods for a few days next week, at least. Do laundry today. Today's the day to do that, or at least by first thing in the morning. Make sure you move vehicles away from trees by tomorrow evening. Keep your devices on chargers. These things right here, every single one of them you have needs to be plugged into a charger until the power goes out. Just keep them there. That way you've got a way to communicate. Be sure you've got full tanks of fuel for your vehicles and your grills and generators. Those are all ready to go. Let's do that today and wrap that up by tomorrow morning if we can. Let's do a timeline on this. Tomorrow morning's dry. So you got most of the day tomorrow. I think most of the day is going to be dry statewide. It's late afternoon to the evening. We might see some passing sleet pellets or maybe some light snow showers, but the snow won't accumulate. But the sleet will probably start to really kick in late tomorrow afternoon, especially, let's say, after sunset tomorrow across the upper part of the state. The Midlands and Low Country, dry early tomorrow evening. Then by the middle of the night, the ice storm really starts to go. This is going to be a mix of freezing rain and sleet for the upstate, the northern Midlands, up into the North Carolina Piedmont. Still dry for the most part in the lower half of the state along and east I-95, maybe a passing shower. Daybreak on Sunday, there will be some light rain and some showers along the coast, maybe some freezing rain as far east as I-95, maybe as far south as Lake Marion, Lake Moultrie. An odd chance this could go as far south as Walterboro, but there might be some, and if it does, it won't matter much. It'll melt pretty quickly, it looks like, based off of what we see now. But the ice storm is ongoing in the Midlands and the upstate. That keeps going through the lunch hour, continues through the afternoon and evening. It will turn to rain eventually near I-20 and to the south of I-20 during the midday hours, early afternoon. Looks like it's all rain for the state capital back to Augusta, and maybe could even be rain by that time in Anderson, Abbeville. I'm a little skeptical on that, but it might be. And then there's the thunderstorm line developing. And yes, the reason for that is you've got that cold Arctic air coming down in that wedge of high pressure east of the mountains, and you've got Gulf moisture being thrown on top of that. That's producing the rain. Then the developing storm is going to pull some instability out of the Gulf of Mexico, and that could give us some thunderstorms. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we've got some rumbles of thunder inside the ice storm itself. That happened back in 2002's ice storm, so I wouldn't be surprised by this. It's a really dynamic system. We don't get these very often in the Carolinas, maybe once every 20 years or so. And then as we move into the evening hours on Sunday, that line of showers and storms heads toward the coast, and then all things wrap up on Monday morning. Then we move to the second phase of this. This is why I'm stressing preparation today in the ice storm areas, all right? Look in the upstate. Yep, this is the official National Weather Service forecast number. See that at the top, NDFD? That's the National Digital Forecast Database. That's what the National Weather Service populates so you can get your temperature forecast. That's a morning low of 6 at Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport. We're looking at mid-teens in the Midlands. We're looking at low to mid-20s in the Low Country. That's why it's so important to make sure your home is prepared in the ice storm area for Tuesday morning. And then Wednesday morning, we're still bitterly cold in the mid-teens in the upstate, low 20s in the Midlands, and mid and upper 20s toward the coast. So just make sure that if you're in that ice storm impact area, upstate, northern Midlands, that you're really, really making those preparations today, because you may not have power here for a good part of next week, and it is going to be just awfully cold. So during and after the storm, make sure you're careful with candles and space heaters. Plenty of blankets and towels. That's why I was saying let's do laundry today or tomorrow, because you can use the towels as insulation around windowsills and door jambs. They can help keep the house insulated just a little bit. And then you've got your blankets for obvious reasons. Avoid travel by foot or vehicle, as falling trees and power lines are a danger. Keep grills and generators outside, all right? I know that's another common sense thing. Just got to say it. Check on vulnerable neighbors. You've got elderly, disabilities. Make sure they're all right. Just check in on them. And remember, pets have got to come inside in this kind of thing too. Keep an eye on your pets. So the bottom line, major ice storm likely for the upstate, possibly the northern Midlands. Power outages, travel problems in the ice storm impact area could last for several days. So make sure you start your preparations today. Threat of icing continues to go down for the low country and the Grand Strand. In fact, much of the low country could be dry for the weekend with just some passing showers until we get to later on Sunday into Sunday night. But there still will be some light rain around at times. Continue to monitor the forecast because there are going to be some more revisions. We're in that time period where we really start to nail these things down. And then again, make sure you are preparing for that bitterly cold air that arrives early next week. So thanks for checking in with me this morning. I'm not sure I'll do another video today. I don't know if it'll be necessary or not. It all depends on if we get some major changes, but I'll check back in with you probably a little bit later on today, maybe with just a brief update on this current post. And then, of course, we'll have another full update tomorrow morning.